Today we're going to talk about experimental design, and we're going to make a concept map on page 3 of our notebooks. I'd like for you to please turn your notebooks so that it's horizontal versus vertical. That means kind of on the side. Okay, so let's begin. We're going to start by writing out the word experimentation. And experimentation involves making a bunch of different things. Let's talk about some of those things that we're going to be doing through experimentation. So experimentation involves making hypotheses. A hypothesis is an initial claim that is not necessarily based on data. When you hypothesize, hypothesizing leads to coming up with experimental groups. An experimental group is when one variable is changed, one factor is changed, like let's say the size or the height of the ramp, or whether or not a group receives a pharmaceutical drug, or whether or not a group receives heat versus not heat, right? It's that variable that you're testing out. It is the experiment. And what we do is we also come up with a control group. So what the control group is, there's no changed variables. Where we have the experimental groups, that group that has one change variable, the control group does not have a change variable. And when we compare data between those two groups, we can start to make claims. Before we make claims, though, we also have to come up with independent variables. The independent variable is the variable that you change, and we also need to make dependent variables. What is a dependent variable? What's the difference between the two? Well, the dependent variables depend on changes to the independent variable. I want you to think about the experiment of what effect does the height of a ramp have on how far a ball goes. The independent variable would be you changing one factor, one variable, the height of the ramp. And the dependent variable would be how far the ball goes, right? There's a change in something that happens. It's a cause and effect relationship. The cause would be the independent variable, and the effect would be the dependent variable. So experimental groups and control groups produce observations. And observations we can think of as data that can act as evidence of the experiment. And once we have concrete evidence that is good and justifiable, we can then make those claims that are based on those observations. We can make any claim we wanted to. I can say that aliens exist on the moon. That's a claim. But I need to have, in science, I need to have observations that are grounded in fact in order to back up that claim. It turns out there aren't aliens on the moon because we have never received any data that would suggest otherwise. So that's experimental design. I hope you enjoyed it.